Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Thanks for joining. Happy to do a little welcome here. This is such an important program for our department, for the state. And so happy that we've been given more resources for another iteration here following the passage of Prop 1. And, I just want to say, especially given all that's occurring, I'm sure many folks on this call if not impacted by current disaster, know someone who is. Certainly a lot of our department has been affected, and we're actively working on response and recovery. And so I know we're distracted, but we want to move forward with Homekey Plus. It's more important than ever that we do so, given how much housing we just lost in those disasters. It's such an important funding on an opportunity to expand, especially the supply of permanent supportive housing, and just really happy that so many folks have expressed interest and continue to express interest kind of in this program. And I guess I'll say, this is also just while you're going to hear a lot from HCD folks today. This is a real strong partnership we have with our agency, the Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, California, CalVet, the Veterans Agency for the state, Department of Healthcare Services, Health and Human Services. So it's been a real collaborative effort, as there are a lot of different funding streams in terms of building that continuum to provide both emergency and interim and permanent housing needs in the state. And so we're here to talk about Homekey Plus today, but you're going to hear a lot about the need for partnership and what we've been doing at the state level, but certainly that importance of partnership at the local level with county behavioral health departments, veteran serving entities like county veteran services officers or the VA, and the need to kind of try to blend those things effectively. He really wants an all kind of like all an approach in terms of trying to finding those resources to effectively deliver these projects. And we've tried to build in a lot of flexibility, right, within that program in order to do so. We're going to talk a little bit about, or the team will talk a little bit about that today. I'm sure there'll be questions. And the real important spirit of Homekey is, we're here to try to answer those questions. We have, pre-application consultations as a requirement of an application that I think are quite helpful in spilling out those kind of details up front that need to be thought about in terms of those efforts. And there's also really a really important aspects to these programs around both speed and cost efficiency, right? This program has been quite helpful in bringing permanent supportive housing and other housing online very fast at cheaper costs typically than new construction have been, and still continues to kind of maintain those values. And finally, before I kick it to the team, I know you guys want to get going. I just want to thank all of you on here as stakeholders, because there was a lot of great program feedback. We moved really fast, obviously, to try to get these resources out following the passage of Prop 1 earlier in 2024. And we just got a lot of really good feedback, even though we did that so quickly. And so the program staff will go through kind of what's new and what stakeholder input we've been able to incorporate. So as they go through that kind of program overview portion of this webinar. So I really just want to welcome everybody and send some appreciation for the continued partnership from all the applications to come. And with that, I'll kick it over to the Homekey team. I think Amy Turner is going to get started, and I hope the webinar goes well. And it's just the beginning, right, of us being partners here with all of you. So with that, kick it over to that Homekey team. Thank you.
Morning. My name is Amy Turner, and I am a program manager here with the Homekey Plus team. I will be starting us off today with the program overview. Homekey Plus provides permanent supportive housing to individuals and their households who meet the following target populations: homeless, at risk of or experiencing homelessness, chronically homeless, and veterans and youth ages 18 to 25 who meet the appropriate homeless definitions. Additionally, all units funded by Homekey Plus must house individuals or their households meeting those definitions who are also experiencing a behavioral health challenge. Please note the Homekey Plus statute determined these target populations, permanent supportive housing, and the behavioral health challenge requirements as approved by California voters. Section 203 of this NOFA covers allocations and geographic distributions. Of the approximate $2.1 billion in Homekey Plus available funding, an estimated $1 billion in Proposition 1 funds are reserved for veteran projects, while the remaining $1 billion are reserved for projects serving all other target populations. Of that $1 billion, approximately $805 million are Proposition 1 funds, and approximately $307 million are Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention Funds, otherwise known as HAP. Continuing on to allocations based on target populations. This chart, located in Section 203 of the NOFA, breaks down the allocations a bit more. Per the Homekey Plus statute, this NOFA allocates 8% of the Homekey Plus funding appropriated for projects serving homeless youth or youth at risk of homelessness. 5% of the appropriated Homekey Plus funding is allocated for projects located in jurisdictions in rural areas. 10% of available Homekey Plus funds are for the discretionary reserve to address covering overages from other allocations and to fund high-scoring projects from oversubscribed regions. Table 3 within Section 203 shows how the Homekey Plus geographic regions are outlined in this NOFA. Homekey Plus aims to equitably offer opportunities throughout the state for eligible applicants. On the next slide, you can see the funding allocations based on this regional breakdown. Table 6 shows the total funding available in this NOFA by regional allocation, serving both the veteran and general populations. HCD used the 2023 Homeless Point-in-Time Count, or PIT, and the 2022 American Community Survey to calculate each region's share of this allocation. The proportion of funds allocated to each region is based on the PIT count and each region's share of the extremely low income, or ELI, households that are paying more than 50% of their income for rent, which is defined as severely rent burdened. In collaboration with CalVet and to properly reflect veteran housing needs across the state, this NOFA distributed the veteran funds based on PIT count and severely rent burdened data specifically for veterans. The veteran figures are deducted from the general population numbers as to not double count veterans in the general population. Section 204 of the NOFA discusses the Homekey Plus program deadlines. Homekey Plus awardees will be subject to the following deadlines listed in this table. It is important to note these deadlines begin 60 days from the date of the Homekey Plus conditional award letter, which is a new change in response to stakeholder feedback. New construction and gap financing projects must break ground within 6 months and must complete construction within 24 months. Capital expenditure must be completed within 27 months. All other eligible uses in Section 201, except new construction and gap financing, must complete construction within 12 months, and capital expenditure must be completed within 15 months. Continuing on to additional program deadlines. Please note the occupancy deadlines for the following. New construction rehab projects have 90 days from construction completion to achieve full occupancy, while acquisition new construction projects with no rehab have 6 months from the date of acquisition to achieve full occupancy. Operating expense expenditures have a deadline of 10 years from the date of initial occupancy. HCD may reimburse eligible costs incurred beginning on March 5th of 2024, except for operating costs. Applicants are encouraged to discuss their options at their required pre-application consultation. Section 207 of the NOFA outlines the Homekey Plus funding limits. Any co-applicant that is not an eligible applicant will be limited to a maximum of 4 Homekey Plus awards. Please note, eligible applicant means a public agency or tribal entity as specified in Section 200. Per project limits include $10 million specifically for single-family scattered site projects and no more than $35 million in total HCD sources for all other project types, exclusive of gap financing. Keep in mind, project funding limits apply to Homekey Plus capital and operating funds, plus all HCD sources of permanent loans for on-site development costs and operating costs. Project exemptions to the funding limits may be approved by the department under the following circumstances. 1, if the project uniquely advances state policy priorities. 2, is high scoring. 3, is located in a high or highest resource area. And or 4, is located in a high cost region. Written justification for this exemption must be submitted at time of application. That concludes my section of program overview, and I will turn it over to my colleague Jana to continue further.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Jana Zawadsky, and I'm a specialist with the Homekey Plus program. I'm going to continue on the program overview and highlight some other exciting changes to the program, beginning with the next section, which is eligible applicants, or Section 200 of the NOFA. So the eligible applicants are cities and counties, and all other state, regional, and local public entities, including councils of government, metropolitan planning organizations, public housing authorities, and regional transportation planning agencies as designated on the section code of the government code on your screen. Eligible applicants are also tribal entities. Eligible applicants may apply independently or jointly with a non- or for-profit development corporation, such as a developer or a co-applicant, which you will see is in the next slide. As discussed in Section 207A, a co-applicant entity may not have more than 4 applicants to Homekey Plus. Continuing on with Section 200, this slide includes more definitions about who may be a co-applicant applying with an eligible applicant. It also includes references to HCD's uniform multifamily regulations, which are linked on this slide, for special purpose entities, which we call SPEs. Every application workbook must include the eligible applicant and co-applicant. If you have a limited partnership, you must also include the administrative general partner and managing general partner for the entities that will be co-applying. All these entities will become parties to the standard agreement if awarded. We had delays in the prior round due to missing applicant information or documents, so please be sure to turn in all forms as needed. And we've attached an Appendix B in your NOFA to help you see a chart of which organization documents are required of various applicant types. In the application workbook, you'll also be asked to provide an authorized representative contact information, as well as an applicant contact for each applicant of Homekey. You will want to provide contacts that will be able to respond quickly to HCD inquiries and updates. HCD will reach out to and copy all applicants and communications. And just a note, Homekey Plus is funded by both Prop 1 and by Homeless Housing Assistance and Prevention, or HHAP Homekey Plus supplemental funding, which we discussed earlier. And next, I'm going to show you the eligible projects under Homekey Plus. So eligible projects are highlighted in Section 202 of the NOFA. This section governs the construction and building types that you can create with Homekey Plus funds that you see before you on the screen. Homekey units awarded under prior NOFA rounds are not eligible for funding under Homekey Plus. However, we did get feedback that some prior Homekey awarded interim to perm housing projects need support covering gaps to convert to PSH. Since interim housing is no longer an eligible use and project type under Prop 1, HCD decided that projects awarded as interim to permanent housing under a prior Homekey round will be eligible for Homekey Plus funding. However, that is only under the gap financing section 502 of the NOFA, and if they demonstrate a need for gap financing. For projects pursuing scattered site housing on multiple contiguous or non-contiguous sites with common ownership, financing, and property management, please review the HCD UMRs for requirements. Eligible projects may be a mix of Homekey assisted units and non-Homekey assisted units. In this case, Homekey Plus would just fund and restrict a portion of the project's total units as long as the project meets the Homekey Plus deadlines. And this list is just a sample of eligible projects. The department welcomes other creative and innovative housing solutions as eligible projects. And on the next slide, we're going to skip down to section 205 of the NOFA to discuss awards and key changes. So section 205 of the NOFA governs the formulas for 1, determining the capital baseline award, and 2, the one-to-one local capital match award that Homekey Plus also provides. Please note this portion of the presentation does not cover new construction cost containment or total capital awards for gap financing. These will be covered later in sections 501 and 502 of the NOFA and further down in the presentation. For Homekey Plus applications that are not submitting gap funding, the award is comprised of relocation plus assisted units amounts. Homekey Plus award determinations will be the lower of the following. 1, that maximum grant amount of $35 million, or the sum of acquisition amount and any additional construction or rehabilitation expenses as supported by an appraisal and other reasonable documentation required by HCD. Added to that is the sum of half the project relocation costs. Local capital match is needed to maximize the Homekey Plus capital award, and additional information on relocation will be provided later in this presentation. Going on, for more information that, again, does not pertain to gap financing, new for Homekey Plus PSH projects, again, that are not applying for gap financing, may receive a $200,000 baseline capital award for Homekey Plus assisted units and manager unit, regardless of unit size and the number of bedrooms. Homekey Plus will fund doors based upon the number of units at the time of acquisition, which may differ from the number of units at project completion. New projects that are doing new construction will be funded by the number of completed units that they build. For acquisition and rehabilitation projects, the award is based on the lower of the 1, the maximum allowable award, or 2, the appraised value plus evidence of rehabilitation costs. For new construction or commercial conversion projects, award is based on the lower of the following. 1, the number of doors at project completion, or 2, the appraisal, if it's available. And further, 1 unit can be divided into 2 units, and that $200,000 baseline award will be per new assisted unit created once it's done. Please see Article 7 of the NOFA for important definitions, including the definition of an assisted unit. Please review Section 205 of the NOFA for other project types, as capital award sizing may vary depending on the project. Next, I'm going to show you more requirements for the capital award. So if a project's costs are higher than the baseline award amount, the department may fund up to additional $100,000 per door. However, that additional amount requires a 1-to-1 match contribution from the applicant. Match can be from local funding source or a land donation. If you have questions about match sources, You may discuss that in the required pre-application consultation or submit questions to us. It's okay to reduce the number of units as well, to accommodate kitchens, additional bedrooms, space for services, and other amenities. However, it's very important to be specific about this in your application, since the award is based on the total number of assisted units at completion. Review NOFA Section 205 for more information on the award calculation for the various project types. For example, if you pick eligible use of affordability covenants as outlined in Section 201 of the NOFA, a recent market study and rent roll are some of the documents used to help size that award. However, please note that the purchase of affordability covenants where Homekey Plus funds buy down the AMI of each unit to achieve long-term affordability is different than the Homekey Plus affordability covenant from NOFA Section 208. That covenant gets applied to all projects once they are awarded. Next, I'm going to show you an example capital stack where this is just a 1 unit stack and it cost a total of, excuse me, $400,000 per door to build. As you can see in the top row, $200,000 of that will come from Homekey Plus baseline award, so long as that unit qualifies as an assisted unit. In row 2, you have your Homekey Plus $100,000 one-to-one match, and that totals your Homekey award to $300,000. Row 3 adds the Homekey Plus award to your own $100,000 match to fully fund your $400,000 unit. All non-Homekey Plus and match sources need to be fully committed and documented with an EFC at the time you apply to Homekey Plus. Finally, with capital awards, we also included Appendix A in the NOFA, and this is a detailed chart that demonstrates different capital match scenarios that you may encounter. Next, I'm going to go to Section 206 of the NOFA, which covers operating award and match. New this year, Homekey offers the opportunity for up to 5 years of operating subsidy award based on the local match. New for Homekey Plus as well is a per unit $1,400 maximum award, regardless of the unit size, whether it's a studio, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom, given the feedback we received. HCD also expanded the timeline to expand the Homekey Plus operating funding to 10 years from occupancy. The duration of the Homekey Plus award is also tied to the amount of match funds. In the application, you'll note greater flexibility to align your local subsidy to the Homekey Plus subsidy within the first 10 years of the cash flow. Please review Section 206 of the NOFA carefully for rules about how to expend the award. For example, expenses via a capitalized operating subsidy reserve must be spent in 10 years from occupancy, not just deposited. While Homekey Plus is designed to be flexible as possible, underwriting compared to Homekey Plus prior rounds has tightened regarding enforceable funding commitments. Please review the EFC definition located in Article 7 and use the guide on the Homekey website under templates to avoid delays in processing your EFCs. And feel free to bring your questions about EFCs to your pre-application consult meeting. Next, I'm going to show you a highlight of just how the match works. And this is a change from prior rounds in that we provide a 1-to-1 match for 3, 4, and 5 years in relation to how much the applicant commits to the project. This is an increase from last year. However, applicants will still need to provide at least 3 years match to be eligible for any Homekey Plus operating award. So looking at the chart, you can see that if you provide at least 3 years of match, you will get up to 3 years of Homekey Plus. Again, if you provide 4 years, you get up to 4 years of Homekey Plus. And 5 or more years of local match gets you up to 5 years of Homekey Plus operating award per assisted unit. I'm also going to demonstrate how the operating award can be contemplated in years of 1 through 10 of the cash flow. in future slides. But before we get there, I want to discuss how you show need for the Homekey Plus operating subsidy. So prior to seeking an operating award, applicants must identify and submit to as many federal, state, and local resources as there are available. Please document funding sources that are depleted or have closed applications while you're looking. Provide information as requested in the Homekey Plus application that documents all of your attempts to fulfill the project's operating needs. If requested, applicants should submit copies of rejection letters. Prop 1 includes additional housing supports funding in the Behavioral Health Services Act, or BHSA, administered by the Department of Health and Human Services. BHSA funds are expected to be available in 2026. Anticipating the gap between Homekey Plus and BHSA, HCD has examples of how to leverage Homekey Plus operating award and document the efforts to secure BHSA funds that will be discussed later in the webinar. Section 2 of the NOFA lists potential match sources that you can research as well. Next, I wanted to talk about the ineligible operating funds that you cannot use operating for. So those are costs associated with any non-assisted units, including manager units, debt service distributions and developer fees, UMR required reserve account initial and annual deposits, deposits to reserves beyond those required by HCD under the UMRs, such as reserves required by other project financing sources, and under no circumstances can Homekey Plus operating funds be used for in connection with a limited partner buyout, substitution, or assignment of ownership interest. Again, I'll reiterate that Section 204 of the NOFA spells out when Homekey Plus operating awards must be expended by. And Section 206V also lists these ineligible costs in the NOFA. On the next slide, here's the example I wanted to show you of how a cash flow could look. And in this example, expenses exceed income by $16,800 or $1,400 a month per unit. This chart is only just capturing the expenses for one unit for, across the 10 years. To close the gap, the project is getting the max award of $1,400 per month or $16,800 annually in Homekey Plus operating, as you see there on row 3. In row 4, the applicant has provided a full 5-year match, so they get the 5 years of Homekey Plus awarded. That's going to automatically kind of calculate for you once you put your local matches into the cash flow and the unit mix of the application. And this table is just one way to show your local match with the Homekey Plus award. The EFC for the local subsidy that you see there in row 4 would indicate that 16,800 units is committed in years 1 through 5 of the project. You'll note in row 5 that the applicant needed 33,600 in years 6 through 10 of an intent to pursue funding. We would still need an EFC for that following the Homekey regulations. And again, looking at the definition for EFC in the NOFA, we'll describe how to do that. We'll describe how to make your EFC if you have a renewable funding source, and etc. However, if applicants, say you got more subsidy than that 16,800 that you see there in row 4, you could actually reduce the amount you need to find in that intent to pursue line item on row 5. Homekey Plus NOFA allows the subsidy to fill the need across year 10 as long as you follow expenditure deadlines. So as you plug your local match into the Homekey cash flow, you will notice that Homekey Plus can be spread throughout years 1 through 10, and it doesn't even need to necessarily start in year 1 of the cash flow. So say you'd met the needs in year 1, well, then you wouldn't draw down on the Homekey Plus subsidy that year. And so I'm just showing you this since spreading out the Homekey Plus award is one way to help sustain projects, especially with the larger gap in the outer year. And I'm going to hand it off next to Matthew Dwight to discuss threshold requirements. And I thank you again for your time. Look forward to seeing your projects.
Thank you, Jana. Hello, everyone. I'm Matthew Dwight. I'm one of the program specialists here. I will be presenting on threshold requirements and scoring criteria for Homekey Plus. Threshold requirements are found in Article 3, Section 300 of the Homekey Plus NOFA. Here's an extensive list of the threshold requirements for the program. For these upcoming slides, threshold requirements bolded are requirements that are either new to threshold or have significant changes for requirements. Items with an asterisk indicate items that will either have guidance or templates made available for applicants on the Homekey Plus webpage. First and foremost, all applications require an eligible applicant, as defined in the NOFA and specified in Section 200 to apply for funding. All co-applicants, including any special purpose entities, must be identified in the application at the time of submission. No additions or co-applicants or special purpose entities will be considered after application has been submitted. Also, to pass threshold, a completed application workbook with all the worksheets and supplemental information must be submitted. New for Homekey Plus is a project ownership structure document. This document is a project-specific ownership chart that shows the ownership relation between the project applicants and all project entities, including the special purpose entity. This document is used by HCD to connect the project ownership structure with the provided legal organizational documents to ensure the primary applicant or co-applicant has legal control over the project site. This is not a staff organizational chart. The project ownership structure chart must be provided with the application. Also required is the authorizing resolutions for the applicants and co-applicants. The templates for the resolutions will be made available on the Homekey Plus website. Also, guidance documents will be provided on the Homekey Plus website for the non-discrimination policy, the statement of actions that the applicant takes to ensure equitable access for groups that are overrepresented in the homeless data, and also a statement of how the applicant plans to engage the target population. Moving on. Both the detailed development plan as well as the appraisal will have guidance on the Homekey Plus website. Please refer to those appraisal guidelines before you submit your appraisal documents. The relocation assistance narrative will remain a threshold requirement. This is a threshold document that must be submitted even if relocation will not apply. Please review the NOFA regarding the information that must be included in the relocation assistance narrative. And this template will also be provided on the Homekey Plus website. Enforceable funding commitments are required for both development sources and rental or operating subsidies. We strongly encourage all applicants to review the criteria for enforceable funding commitments in the NOFA definition section. The name of the applicant, project name, project address or APN, as well as the amount and the terms of the funding source must be included in the EFC to be considered valid. And also lastly, a new threshold requirement for Homekey Plus is applicants and co-applicants must attend a pre-application consultation with Homekey Plus staff. While this has been a common feature of the Homekey Plus that most applicants would partake in, it is now required that both applicants and co-applicants be in attendance of the pre-app consultation. This pre-app consultation is required before an applicant can submit an application for that project. Moving on. In addition to required threshold documents, there are additional application materials and documents that applicants must provide with the application. This includes a certificate of good standing, completed certification and legal disclosure statement, a signature block of all applicants and co-applicants, a pay data record or a fiscal TIN form, an EIN verification for nonprofits, a tax exempt status letter from the IRS or FTB, a CEQA determination or NEPA determination, and if there's a phase 2 environment report needed, as stated in the phase 1, that should also be included. Lastly, with Homekey Plus focused on serving a population with a behavioral health challenge, along with potential future funding made available in serving this target population, Homekey expects applicants to make good efforts in communicating and coordinating with their local behavioral health departments. Program is asking that applicants evidence this coordination and cooperation with a support letter from their local county behavioral health department describing their support for the project. And this can include capital funds or operating or service commitments, referrals, or stakeholder collaboration. If this letter can't be secured at the time of application, applicants will need to describe in writing their efforts to obtain this letter. On to the next slide. I'll be covering application scoring criteria. This is a detailed breakdown of the scoring criteria and the point totals, which can be found in section 305 of the NOFA. For Homekey Plus, the maximum points offered is 176 points. In order to be eligible for funding, applicants must score a minimum of 100 points. And this threshold point amount remains the same as the prior Homekey round 3. For points, 20 points can be earned from site control alone. 15 points can be earned under a new section called cost containment, which I will go into more detail. 45 points can be earned for sustained operating leverages and commitments. 40 points will be given for experience and coordination, and 40 points for community impacts. And then 16 points can be earned for site selection, and this includes proximity to amenities. Negative points can also be earned for relocation impacts, and also there is the negative points, which is assessed by the department, which I will also go into a little more detail shortly. The overall point structure is similar to Homekey prior round 3. And in the interest of time, I will go through and highlight the primary changes and additions for points earned under Homekey Plus. So for Homekey Plus, applications can earn points under this category of cost containment. The first one is for projects where the average cost per assisted unit is under 200,000, which is the baseline amount from Homekey Plus. A point is earned for every $10,000 increment under that 200,000. And also, we will be granting 5 additional points for projects that utilize property under the state excess site program or any land declared as surplus land by a local agency. Moving on. Homekey Plus will award points for documented commitments of non-Homekey Plus rental or operating subsidies. And that will be used to maintain the ongoing affordability and sustainability of operations for the project. Applicants can earn points based on non-Homekey operating funding leverage to cover operating costs committed through the first 15 years of project operations. This score is based on weighted commitment type, percentage of costs covered, the length of commitment, and the length of commitment, and up to 1 point for each year through year 15 of project operations. It is important to note For this scoring section of 305-3A, applicants need to score at least 10 points to be prioritized by the Homekey Plus program. And applications not achieving a minimum score of 10 points in this section, but have higher scores, will be prioritized above other lower scores in this section. For the next slide, we'll just quickly overview of the different operating subsidy types and their sort of point values. Project-based rent subsidies are weighted at a full point. And this includes any HUD project-based vouchers or any project-based vouchers through the county or local jurisdiction. Committed operating subsidy is also weighted at 1 full point. And this includes any COSERs, operating award letter, committed HAP dollars, or a resolution from the local jurisdiction committing funding to the project. Also, we have a renewable source subsidy type, which is at 0.75 points of, and these are sources that are dependent on future allocations, competitive applications, or a process being allocated that will likely be renewed. Just please note, Homekey Plus will not consider uncommitted years of HAP as renewable. Continuing on for this list is the tenant-based voucher, which is worth 0.5 point. These include your typical housing choice tenant-based vouchers or VASH tenant-based vouchers or local rent vouchers. Also worth 0.5 point is either supportive services or healthcare reimbursements. And this includes, funding from CalAIM. And the intent to pursue is worth 0.25 point. And this is essentially any funds that is sort of supported by a letter or doc that mentions an intent to pursue should funding become available, but is not yet authorized by either a board or council or voters. So that is the subsidy types and their weight. So we'll continue on. Also still in this section of sustained operating leverages, applications can earn more points that request less Homekey Plus operating award than the maximum eligible operating award amount. So 2 points for each 10% increment of maximum eligible Homekey Plus operating award that is not utilized. Applications that do not request an operating award will automatically earn 20 points. Homekey Plus will also award points for projects that are able to bring in committed funds from either the Mental Health Services Act or MHSA or the upcoming BHSA, Behavioral Health Service Act, into the project. This will need to be evidenced by an EOC from the local county behavioral health department. Moving on to the next slide. For experience and coordination, applicants can earn 15 points with a commitment letter, MOU, or other formal agreement between the primary and co-applicants and or other involved parties, documenting how to complete the development and management team and how each are connected and will work together on the project. For these points to be counted, the MOU and commitment letter document must be submitted at the time of application. Also, change for this round, to encourage your larger household units, Homekey Plus will award points for projects with at least 25% of assisted units that are 2 bedrooms or larger. And finally, on to the last slide, is the negative points. As many are aware, HCD has a negative points policy. This applies to all state and federal HCD programs. And through this negative points policy, the department ensures that limited funding resources are directed to applicants and awardees that demonstrate an ongoing capacity to successfully operate and manage affordable housing developments. An applicant may be assessed negative points by the department during the application review period. You can find the full negative points policy on this link, which is also published on the department's website. HCD will notify the applicant in writing if negative points have been assessed, and applicants will have the opportunity to appeal set forth by this NOFA. As a reminder, if an applicant receives points in any of the scoring categories that I have gone over and subsequently fails to meet the deliverable, the applicant may be subject to future negative points. If any applicants or co-applicants have received an award for any projects or programs here at HCD, we encourage you to reach out to either the asset management and compliance, grants management, or multifamily grant management to ensure you are in good standing or to resolve any existing negative points. And this concludes my portion of the presentation, and I will pass it to my colleague, Courtney.
Thank you, Matt. Good morning, everyone. My name is Courtney Awad. I'm a Homekey Plus program specialist, and today I'll be sharing additional NOFA requirements, starting with supportive service requirements on the next slide. Section 302 describes the supportive services requirements for all projects. Collectively, we look at these requirements as the Supportive Services Plan, or SSP. The SSP is an essential component of the project application that provides crucial information for understanding how and what supportive services will be provided. Similar to previous rounds of Homekey, SSPs must be project-specific and tailored to the target population for each unique target population served by the project, whether that's youth, veterans, or any other member of the target population as defined in Article 7 of the NOFA. For those applicants who have applied to previous rounds of Homekey, the requirements in Section 302 have been modified for Homekey Plus to include new standards that are designed to better serve the people who live in Homekey Plus assisted units. It's very important to review every requirement thoroughly, regardless of your experience with the Homekey program. Applicants will submit SSPs to the department in the form of direct responses in the application workbook, as well as via supplemental uploads. In the application workbook, you can expect to find prompts for an itemized budget, a staff plan that demonstrates appropriately sized caseload ratios, details on how the project will comply with transportation requirements for services that may be located off-site, experience requirements, and more. Supplemental uploads will include items such as the property management plan, other written policies found under Section 302 IB, and resumes for staff overseeing case managers, among other items. The department strongly encourages applicants to identify a lead services provider prior to submitting an application and is offering points under Section 305 to projects that do have that commitment. A memorandum of understanding or commitment letter will serve as the evidence of lead service provider selection. Regardless, the completed SSP must be submitted at the time of application. And on my next slide, I will discuss tenant selection and compliance with Housing First. All Homekey Plus referrals must be made through the local coordinated entry system or other comparable prioritization system. Generally, collaboration with the local COC and local county behavioral health departments is strongly encouraged for all Homekey Plus projects, but especially where projects are deviating from CES. Applicants should fully detail how the tenant selection process will comply with Section 505 of the NOFA. When reviewing SSPs, the department will be verifying overall compliance with Housing First law among all components. The department will work with applicants who submit a complete SSP to refine discrepancies until the SSP can be approved. However, it is important to note that the department may withhold a portion of the award if the SSP is not approved when the standard agreement is executed. We expect to post Housing First guidance to the resources section of the Homekey Plus website linked on the screen in the coming weeks. This guidance is intended to provide a greater understanding of how applicants can successfully incorporate Housing First principles into their application. We also hope to reduce the need for refinement and reduce the risk of instances where the department withholds funds. Next slide, please. Now, let's move on to the requirements for single-family scattered site housing projects found in Section 303. Until this point, we have focused on multifamily and commercial sites that may be eligible under Homekey Plus. However, applicants may propose a project that consists of multiple single-family sites. This includes duplex and triplex homes depending on local need. Under this model, each bedroom of the home may be considered an assisted unit if the bedroom is private and can be secured with a lock. Applicants should also consult with local code for other requirements. In addition to the requirements in Section 303, projects under this model must comply with Section 8303B of the 2017 Uniform Multifamily Regulations. This includes requirements to have all sites under common ownership and financing, as well as other requirements regarding insurance, reporting, and recordation of the affordability covenant described in Section 208 of this NOFA. Successful applications may be issued a conditional award for an amount up to $10 million total to go towards acquisition, rehabilitation, and an award for operating expenses for up to 5 sites. Requests that exceed these limits are subject to the approval of the director as specified in Section 207. Now, let's take a deeper look at some of the unique milestones that must be met following a conditional award on my next slide. Post-conditional award, there are 2 phases where documentation is due: 60 days for site control and 90 days for all other NOFA requirements. If milestones are not met, the conditional award may be rescinded. A note about the P&A and Phase 1 ESA, the NOFA allows for alternate documentation to evidence costs for potential environmental concerns, to evidence costs or potential environmental concerns, So if you are applying for this project type, please keep that in mind. Section 303 has the full detail of what is expected to be provided after the conditional award is issued. Overall, our goal was to build this section being mindful of the unique differences between acquiring single-family sites on the private market and multifamily or other commercial sites. The pre-application consultation is an important step for all projects, and especially for projects under this model. If you have questions prior to that consultation, of course, you may submit them in the Q&A here, but you may also email them to the Homekey Plus inbox, which will be shared at the end of this presentation. And that concludes my portion of the presentation. I will now hand it over to Becky Moe for the next section.
Thank you so much, Courtney. Good morning, everyone. My name is Becky Moe. I'm one of the section chiefs for Homekey Plus program. It's my honor to give a presentation to the next 3 sections. Next slide, please. First and foremost, we are going to take a look at Section 500, the veteran project, and its specific requirements. Homekey Plus has over $1 million in funding for veterans. A Homekey Plus project can choose to solely serve veterans or to reserve some of its units to veterans. It truly depends on the local need. All Homekey Plus assisted units serving veterans need to meet target population. As of August 13th, 2024, HUD published a special rule for VASH program, which requires veterans service-connected disability benefits to be excluded from household income calculation for the purpose of determining income eligibility. This rule applies for both project-based and tenant-based VASH applicants, if applicable to your project. I know you may be wondering what to do even with the special rule in place, and still some of the 30% AMI units could not be listed up. That will bring us to the next slide, which describes the secondary tenants policy. In short, the policy states during a vacancy, if units cannot be filled with veterans at or below 30% AMI, secondary tenants can be housed. Secondary tenants are defined in statute as veterans experiencing homelessness with an income up to 60% of the AMI. Rents for any redesignated units are determined by income that corresponds to the secondary tenant's household income. Prior to housing secondary tenants, HCD will require grantees to document and demonstrate good faith efforts to place the target population in veterans units before the petition can be granted. The good faith efforts includes delivering adequate marketing of vacant units for at least 90 days prior to the initial lease-up, and at least 60 days after a unit turnover, we further request grantee to reach out to different resources to identify and receive referrals of target population. Resources include, but are not limited to, local homelessness and veteran service providers, local continuum of care, and Department of Veterans Affairs. Lastly, documented contacts will be required for the target population who were referred to the projects but chose not to list the unit. The information of their case manager is needed as well. Upon vacancy, the grantee is required to redesignate the next vacant unit as a permanent supportive housing unit available to veterans with income at 30% AMI. The goal is to return the project into compliance with the unit mix required by the project's standard agreement. I want to point out that veterans who are eligible to occupy 30% AMI unit with the hot batch special rule are not considered as taking advantage of secondary tenants policy. And at all time, the project shall have no less than 30% of its veterans units leased to a household with an income at 30% AMI. In other words, no more than 70% of the veterans units may be leased to secondary tenants. Next slide, please. This slide discusses about the DVBE requirement, which is specific to veteran project. And as you can see on the slide, the full name of DVBE is Disabled Veterans Business Enterprise. Rule of thumb, no less than 5% of total construction cost need to be spent with DVBE. It can be work performed by DVBE or supplies provided by DVBE. Each project shall identify a DVBE specialist who coordinates directly with CalVet in the identification and use of DVBEs. Upon commencement of construction, the project shall submit a report to HCD and CalVet on the proposed DVBE plan implementation. And upon completion of construction, a report detailing the actual payment to DVBE will be required. Negative points may apply if a project is not in compliance. And now let's take a look at next section, section 501. A hallmark of Homekey has been producing housing quickly and cost effectively. Homekey team will continue to retain and build upon these principles by requiring that applicants seeking funding for new construction incorporate cost containment strategies and commit to total development cost per unit caps. The cap is inclusive of Homekey Plus award and all other capital sources and expenditures, with the exceptions of land cost, COSARs, and other required reserves. Caps will be the lesser of $450,000 per unit or applicable 2024 TCAC basis limit. Like other Homekey Plus project type, awards for new construction cost containment will be in the form of a grant and will provide up to 80% of the funds upfront. All new construction projects must commence construction within 6 months and have a temporary certificate of occupancy within 24 months. The clock starts 60 days after receiving Homekey Plus awards. The remaining 20% of funds will be disbursed upon submission of the temporary certificate of occupancy. Grantees who are unable to meet the critical milestones within applicable queue periods may be subject to negative points. Therefore, applicants are advised that Homekey Plus new construction projects are not contemplated to be paired with tax credits or other highly competitive sources which are not secured at the time of Homekey Plus application. Applicants are further advised that construction shall not be contingent or reliant on any reasonably foreseeable externalities or timelines not disclosed in the application. Next slide, please. Section 502 introduced a new component of Homekey Plus, which is to use its funds towards projects with financing gaps that serves Homekey Plus target population. The intent here is to move projects forward and quickly increase the number of units available. Projects within this use must be submitted by the application due date, April 3rd, 2025. And during the review period, the applications will be prioritized as follows. The top tier is for projects with an existing HCD award commitment with a pending disencumbrance per HCD's disencumbrance policy within 6 months of the NOVA date. And the second tier is for projects with an existing HCD award commitment with at least one prior unsuccessful tax credit application. And within this tier, applications will be ranked by total HCD funds committed. The next tier is for all other HCD-funded projects, which will be ranked by total amount of HCD funds committed. And the last tier is for projects without HCD funds that are stalled due to unsuccessful tax credit application. Application within this tier will be ranked by total amount of public resources committed. And let's dive more into the details. Next slide, please. I know many of the applications seeking for Homekey Plus gap financing already receive other HCD funding sources. So I want to bring the requirements on the slides to your attention. On the Homekey Plus gap financing application, a local public entity is required as the lead applicant. And all other sponsors in connection with existing HCD award needs to apply collectively. Some of the project information on Homekey Plus application should be identical with the information demonstrated on previous HCD application, such as the unit mix, the committed funding sources, and site control. If there is any discrepancies, we suggest you discuss with the other HCD program and reconcile before submitting Homekey Plus application. Homekey Plus funds are not intended to substitute performing debt or committed local public agency funds. The amount and terms of funding sources in the Homekey Plus gap financing application must generally remain the same or to be higher and more restrictive than the amount and terms on the previous HCD applications. For the purpose of this gap financing projects only, Homekey Plus will award no more than $450,000 per unit. Any amount over this limit will require other funding sources in place at the time of application. All Homekey Plus gap financing awarded projects must commence construction within 6 months and submit temporary certificate of occupancy within 24 months. And again, the clock doesn't start until 60 days after receiving Homekey Plus award. And the whole idea of gap financing is to allow projects to require the full capital amount needed to complete construction, thereby avoiding the need to apply for tax credit or seek other sources of funds. Following a Homekey Plus award, if a sponsor syndicates and sells a portion of their ownership interest to a partner or equivalent party seeking tax losses associated with the project, 9/10 of the gross proceeds of that sale shall be remitted to HCD. Negative points may be assessed to the sponsor in the event the project is sold or refinanced with a distribution of net equity. Please keep in mind, these are highlights of the gap financing project requirements. For detailed information, please refer to the NOFA or request pre-application consultation, which Connor will be presenting next. Take it away, Connor.
Thank you, Becky. Hello, my name is Connor Leahy, and I'm a program manager in the Homekey Plus program. And I'm going to be discussing the application submission, review process, and technical assistance. Next slide, please. Homekey Plus NOFA Section 401 requires that all eligible applicant teams attend a pre-application consultation prior to submitting a final application. Pre-application consultations will only be scheduled after a project intake survey has been submitted. This survey helps us learn more about your prospective project and better prepares us to provide project-specific assistance. Please email us at homekey@hcd.ca.gov to get this process started. Requests for a pre-application consultation should include contact information for the eligible applicant and all members of the prospective project team, including co-applicants and consultants. Pre-application consultations have already begun and will continue on an ongoing basis until the Homekey Plus application period closes. Again, the Homekey Plus NOFA for gap financing projects closes on April 3rd, 2025. And the Homekey Plus NOFA closes on May 30th, 2025 for all other project types. Next slide, please. The Homekey Plus NOFA outlines specific application requirements. Applications must be submitted with all required organizational and legal documents. Applications that are found to be missing required documents will receive a notice of failure. Please be sure to review the Homekey Plus NOFA Articles 2 and 3, which describe the minimum application requirements and the scoring process. The Homekey Plus application review process of non-gap financing projects will be based on a first-come, first-served basis after the release of the Homekey Plus Excel application and HCD Connect portal. The Homekey Plus Excel application will be available on the Homekey Plus website the week of January 27th, 2025. We encourage all applicants to review the NOFA in detail prior to submitting an application. Next slide, please. The Homekey Plus NOFA indicates that HCD reserves the right to prioritize and review awarding of applications based on the following criteria. Project readiness, which is demonstrated by submission of a complete and accurate Homekey Plus application. A complete and accurate application is defined as, but not limited to, a complete Excel workbook, accurate and up-to-date legal documents, and all organizational documents for all parties related to the project ownership structure. This includes any and all special purpose entities. Applications that have a minimum of 10 points in Section 305, subsection 3A of the application demonstrating to HCD the project has sufficient operating and rental subsidies to support long-term operations of the project. Additionally, HCD may continue to review applications not achieving a minimum score of 10 points in section 305 subsection 3A, but which have higher scores than other submitted applications. HCD rights and reservations also include, but are not limited to, consulting with CalVet on any veteran-serving project application, requesting clarification of unclear or ambiguous statements made in an application, and to deploy unused funds from an undersubscribed allocation to fund other eligible applicants for other subsets of the target population. All of the information I just shared is available for further review in the Homekey Plus NOFA, which is available on the Homekey Plus website. Finally, please keep in mind if a significant departure from the application package is made after a project has been awarded, that can mean a reevaluation of a project score, reduce the grant amount, or an assignment of negative points to the applicant. Next slide, please. Application packages that do not meet the pre-mentioned criteria may be placed on hold for award consideration by HCD and may not be considered for funding. Next slide, please. The department is excited to roll out our new HCD Connect portal that stakeholders will use to apply for program solicitations. Stakeholders likely received an e-blast describing how eligible applicants only must request access to the portal. We encourage all potential eligible applicants request portal access as soon as possible. Applications cannot be submitted prior to establishing a profile on HCD Connect. Once eligible applicants have set up their profile, they can associate other parties such as consultants, co-applicants, and etc. with their draft project applications. These additional parties will be able to access the draft application they are associated with through the HCD Connect portal and assist with the application preparation process prior to submitting your team's Homekey Plus grant application. Next slide, please. The HCD Connect portal registration guide is available on the HCD Connect website now. This document is a comprehensive step-by-step guide which shows eligible applicants how to sign up for the HCD Connect user portal. Please see the link below, which will lead you to a PDF of the HCD Connect registration guide. Now, I will pass this off to our friend in the Multifamily Grants Management Wing, David Egan.
Thank you, Connor. My name is David Egan, and I'm a specialist with the Multifamily Grant Management Branch, also known as MGM, which is the branch that will monitor the standard agreement contracts once fully executed by the department. The primary roles of MGM are ensuring grantee compliance to the terms of the contract and completion of required milestones by their respective deadlines, disbursement of funds, including collection of the conditions of disbursement prior to contract execution, providing technical assistance on items related to the Homekey Plus contract, reviewing annual reports. Now we'll move on to the project transition. During this stage, the grantee's primary point of contact will transition from the Homekey Plus ambassador to the grant management representative in the Multifamily Grant Management Branch following contract execution. Each grantee's authorized representative will receive a welcome email from the MGM representative once the contract is executed. The email will introduce your rep and contain an overview of reporting and documentation requirements to stay in compliance with the Homekey Plus program. Attached to the welcome letter will be a project contact form for the grantee to complete and return to the representative. It's important to keep this form updated, notify the department of any changes to staffing or authorization so that the department knows who to contact for reporting and other requirements. Now moving on to the milestones and inner reporting section. The MGM representative assigned to the contract will send advance reminders when a milestone is coming due. The performance milestone completion form is for periodic updates on project progress, namely when one of the milestones listed in the grantee's standard agreement, Exhibit E, is completed. Milestone extension request after application page should be rare and should only be requested when there are unforeseeable circumstances using the request for milestone extension form located on our website. Each project shall submit an annual Homekey Plus report to MGM for 5 years following standard agreement execution. This will be due on March 31st of the following year. The annual report will continue to be required for at least 5 years following full occupancy of the project and until the Homekey Plus operating subsidy has been fully expended. For more information about annual report, please review section 601 of the Homekey Plus NOFA. Now, moving on to the disbursement of grants funds. The contract must be fully executed by the department and all pre-disbursement items must be submitted and approved before funds may be dispersed. The first correspondence each grantee will receive is the pre-disbursement email sent by the assigned MGM representative shortly after the award letter. The letter provides each authorized representative what the expectations are and refers to the request for funds pre-disbursement checklist that will provide a list of documentation the grantee must submit prior to the award funds being dispersed. Submitting these documents promptly will help streamline disbursement after the contract is executed. The grantee is also encouraged to send draft versions of the request for funds form and other documents for review and feedback to mitigate any potential delays when it comes time to request the actual disbursement of award funds. The initial Homekey Plus funds disbursement must be wired to an escrow account set up by the grantee and be accompanied by a department-approved affordability covenant, which must be recorded at the time of escrow. Please remember it can take up to 45 days to receive payment from the department after submitting a completed request for funds form, which is why it's so important to submit conditions of disbursement as soon as possible to prevent any delays. Now, moving on to the insurance requirements. All insurance policies must be current at time of disbursement, contain the minimum amounts of coverage, and name the State of California Department of Housing and Community Development as an additional insured, as outlined in Section 606 of the Homekey Plus NOFA. All projects must provide commercial general liability and workers' compensation policies prior to disbursement of award funds. When applicable, current automobile liability, builder's risk, and self-insurance policies are also due prior to disbursement. All projects must also provide property insurance at acquisition or construction completion. An insurance requirement checklist will be made available on the Homekey Plus website under Monitoring and Disbursement. For more information, please visit the hcd.ca.gov, specifically the Homekey Plus page on our website for more information regarding essential resources, including this NOFA, scheduling a pre-application consultation, program forms, monitoring disbursement, registering for HCD Connect, and this webinar. For more questions not addressed in the NOFA, please email homekey@hcd.ca.gov. Now, I'll hand this back to program staff to answer some of your questions live. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Apologies for that delay there. I hope everyone can hear me now. We received a question throughout the presentation about the 2017 UMR limits to supportive services costs. So we wanted to take a minute to address the limitations that folks may have been dealing with in the previous rounds. In 2024, late 2024, the department issued an administrative notice, which we can drop in, we can attach here in this presentation. It's Administrative Notice 24-05. And this notice raises the supportive service cost limitations to up to $10,000 per unit. Applicants should take a look at the administrative notice to verify that all of the target population that they're serving and assisted units does meet the requirements to achieve that $10,000 per unit cap. But that should help with some of the limitations we've heard in the past serving this target population, especially as we move into more beefed up supportive service requirements. So I hope that is helpful to all. We will post a link to that administrative notice here shortly.
Great, thank you, Courtney. And this is Tim Lawless again. I'll go over a few other questions that we got. One was around determining maximum rent limits in terms of the sort of the cash flow. That for Homekey Plus units, that's actually in the Uniform Multifamily Regulations. The max rent will essentially be 30% of the 30% AMI that those particular units are restricted to. Very similar to sort of how that works for some of our other homeless programming. Hopefully that makes sense. Happy to talk about it more offline if not. Another question we got was around the county behavioral health letter of support requirement or sort of efforts to get such a letter. The question was around projects that are serving veterans only, where the VA is providing, the Veterans Administration is providing the mental health services, and it's exclusively a veteran project. The question was, is there a need for there to be a county behavioral health department sort of letter of support in that case? If so, what purpose would it serve? I think it's something to discuss in the pre-application consultation. But essentially, if a project is relying exclusively on the VA, not only for services, but for the tenant referral process, then likely there's not going to be a need. But I think it's going to be a little bit case by case. So it's good to talk about that in the pre-app consult. We did get another question, which I think is important here. It was earlier in the presentation. The question is, I understand that BHSA requires a robust stakeholder process, BHSA meaning the Behavioral Health Services Act, which at least in our county, and this is Sonoma County, will be starting in the next few months. This process will take some time and funds cannot be committed until after the process is complete. The Homekey Plus NOFA indicates that BHSA can be used as a source of operational funding. However, the timing does not appear to align with the timing for submitting a Homekey Plus application. So yeah, we did certainly get that feedback. We understand that those changes to BHSA are not coming online until summer of 2026, and that prior to that, there's going to be kind of a local input process. It's probably going to look different county by county, but we understand that in many cases, if not all cases, it's going to be difficult to have that sort of committed funding in hand at the point of when you're submitting a Homekey Plus application. So we essentially just encourage prospective applicants to be having those conversations with the county behavioral health department. Many of those partnerships are already in place, but just sort of strengthening those partnerships, talking about potentially using that funding in the future to fund kind of the project in the out years. But certainly understand in many cases those committed funds can't be in hand in a matter of months in most counties at least. So I appreciate that question being raised. We got another question. This was about a project that would be kind of a combination of hotel, motel, kind of act rehab, and then on the same site there would be sort of a new construction component. And how would that work in terms of the differing timelines for act rehab versus new construction, as well as the sort of total development cost per unit caps on new construction. So we are very open to a project like that. But essentially, I think how that would work is, there would be sort of the 12-month deadline for the act rehab portion. There would be the essentially 26-month deadline to complete construction for the new construction portion. We would probably want, two separate development budgets within the application so that we can sort of properly track whether those new construction total development cost per unit caps are being achieved. But that's really something that we'd want to discuss in greater detail during the pre-application consultation. I think it's a great idea. There's just some complexities that we would need to sort of work through offline. Kind of looking through the list here, I think there were also some questions around, when is some of the guidance going to be available on our website? Maybe I can turn it over to Angela Marin, our section chief, to address that particular question.
Yes, thank you, Tim. We are working to upload all of the guidance and templates referenced in the NOFA in this presentation today as soon as possible. Our application is expected to post next week, hopefully on the earlier side of the week. And all the templates will follow. We have resolution templates already up on our website. And hopefully, yes, no more. We'll have those soon and without delay.
Great, thank you, Angela. A couple other questions I'm seeing here that I think it's worth talking through. One of the questions was from earlier. How do you have tenant-based vouchers committed? Aren't those dependent upon the tenant? Great question. Obviously, we're in a world, at least in many communities, where the project-based voucher cap is at its max, and in certain communities, no additional project-based vouchers can be assigned to a given project. So, with that in mind, we want to be flexible with Homekey and allow for the possibility of, tenant-based vouchers being used. There are some parameters that we have in the NOFA around sort of underwriting assumptions about how many units can we sort of assume at max are going to be utilized by folks with a tenant-based voucher. But essentially, we'd want to see in the application package sort of evidence that, hey, there are a lot of, outstanding tenant-based vouchers in a given community. Folks that are homeless have these vouchers, but they can't, they're not able to secure a unit, in the open market. And, certainly we can kind of talk through it more in a pre-app consult if an applicant is wanting to use tenant-based vouchers, but it's essentially kind of a workaround, if you will, to the project-based voucher cap that many communities are facing. Yeah, and we have another question here that Jana, who you heard from earlier, will address.
Hi, so I'm seeing a few questions actually about NEPA. And if you go to section 510 of the NOFA, you'll note that, grantees must consider environmental impacts early in the planning process before decisions are made and actions are taken. If you do have questions about NEPA, I just wanted to let you know we have a strong partnership with our Department of Federal Financial Assistance. And I know some of you do reach out to the NEPA email within HCD. We would, request that you email Homekey as well, and we can help you with your NEPA specific questions and everything like that. NEPA, when at the time of application, if your NEPA is not yet approved, that should be okay. We'd like to know more about the specific situation though, and, make sure that you're considering NEPA early on and that you have a very clear timeline of when everything is going to be completed and approved by, so that we can make sure, that it doesn't impact the Homekey milestones, those tight deadlines that you have to meet. And that's all I wanted to throw out there on NEPA.
Thank you. Okay, yeah, we have another great question. Can you describe how the HAP funding will be awarded and if there are specific requirements for an applicant to receive HAP funding? My understanding is that a non-compliant housing element disqualifies an otherwise eligible entity from receiving this portion of the Homekey Plus funding. Thank you. So I'm really appreciative of this question being raised. So, I think the best way to think about this is you all are applying for a Homekey Plus award, right? You're not applying specifically for Prop 1 bond funding or HAP funding. You're applying for a Homekey Plus award. And HCD will essentially let you know on the back end what source of funding is funding your award if you are awarded. But to answer the question in a little bit greater detail, on the back end, we're going to determine, is the eligible applicant potentially eligible for HAP? In other words, is the eligible applicant a county, one of the 14 large cities, et cetera? And if the answer is yes, then we'll look also, is there a compliant housing element in place? Is there an approved regional homeless plan in place? And if the answer to those two questions are yes, then it's certainly possible you'll get that HAP funding. If the answer is no, then you would sort of revert potentially to the Prop 1 funding source. So I hope that makes sense, but the short of it is it's really something that HCD will determine sort of behind the scenes. Okay, another question. Can gap financing projects request capital funding in addition to the 450 max per door? Okay, so let me just clarify here. So for the gap financing, well, a couple of things. And I'm not sure if this was raised earlier or not, but I just want to put it out there that the gap financing projects and the new construction cost containment projects are sort of mutually exclusive. And they each have kind of their own funding award structure, if you will. So for the gap financing projects specifically, we will fund up to $450,000 per unit. That is for the gap of $450,000 per unit. That $450,000 can include capital only, if no additional operating is needed, or it can include a combination of capital and operating. So hopefully that answers the question. If anything else is needed, though, above $450K per unit in order to make a project feasible, that is where the local match would kick in, where essentially anything over 450, the applicant would need to kind of fund that that additional amount. We have gotten some questions, I think more than one, around gap financing. And what about projects that already have tax credits? So in that case, I mean, I will say sort of the impetus, I think, behind gap financing was really to fund projects that are stuck because they were unsuccessful in getting tax credits, and the Homekey Plus funding would sort of forego the need for tax credits. But we do understand that there are some projects out there that have tax credits, still have a gap, still need assistance, kind of moving forward. So those projects are not prevented from applying. I think they would fall into very likely that sort of tier 3 category. So they may not be prioritized for funding necessarily, but certainly not forbidden from being from applying either. We're still kind of scrolling through to see if there's any other questions that we can answer in real time. Yeah, that'd be great.
Hi, this is Courtney again, talking about supportive services plan again. We did receive a couple of questions about supportive services plans that I think would be helpful to highlight here. One being, are they required for all projects? And the simple answer to that is yes, they are required for all projects. And then another question, which was a little bit more nuanced, was asking if we'll have a supportive services plan template similar to the development plan template. In the coming weeks, we will be posting guidance for Housing First, as well as best practices for PSH, permanent supportive housing. However, we will not be posting an actual template for the supportive services plan, and that's for a couple of reasons. I think the first part is that the application will contain the prompts you need to address most of what's being asked for in the supportive services plan. Otherwise, the application will prompt you for written policies that you may have on hand regarding your property management plan. There are a few narrative pieces that you will need to provide. So those narrative pieces will be, again, prompts in the application. So there's nothing that's going to be nebulous and unknown. But the guidance, that's where that will come in handy for you. So take a look for those guidance, and we will get those posted in the coming weeks. You can take a look at some of the previous guidance that we've set up. There's very little that has changed, especially with Housing First. So but please be on the lookout for those in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Courtney. Okay, I've got a couple more here that I can go over. One is from earlier, essentially a question about minimum training and education requirements for the DVBE specialist. So we can reach out to you. We can reach out to the inquirer directly here, and anybody else who's interested. We are working as our Chief Deputy Director mentioned kind of in his opening remarks, we're working hand in hand with Calvet on rolling out this program, and they're really the expert in the DVBE space. So we're happy to forge a connection there to make sure that those requirements are understood and any TA that may be needed can be provided. Next question. This is around tiny home villages. Are they allowed? What are the building requirements? So, the phrase tiny home is notoriously ill-defined, but I think the short answer to this question is those are really not a good fit for Homekey Plus. These Homekey Plus projects are going to be, permanent supportive housing straight away. These units are going to have 55-year affordability covenants, as we heard. So, at a minimum, they will need to last that length of time. And as sort of standard PSH units, they're subject to all the building code requirements that you would expect in sort of any type of new construction project. So tiny homes, not a great fit for Homekey Plus, but if something else is meant by tiny homes, since that word is used in a variety of ways, we're happy to have an offline discussion to get into sort of the details of that. Okay. We're just looking to see if there's anything else that maybe we can answer quickly for the remaining attendees. Just bear with us for a moment. Yeah, I think we do have a fair number of other questions that we unfortunately didn't have a chance to answer today, but it's going to require a little bit of discussion internally. But I want to assure all the attendees, we do have a record of all the questions here, who asked them, and how to get in touch with you. So we will take these questions back and get you answers. Really appreciate all these questions being asked, and appreciate everyone's participation today. Much more to come. We're thrilled to be rolling out this program and thrilled with the amount of interest in getting more PSH units built for this target population. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a great